Okay, hello everyone. This is my workshop 9.17 on theoretical perspectives, alternative lens for practice. Okay, so here are the overall objectives. Honestly, I'm just going to introduce key theoretical perspectives in education and their implications for practice through John Dewey, Lev, Paulo, and Jean. Okay, number one. So first, we're going to briefly talk about behaviorism, like in a little introduction. Principles and applications. Okay, so first we're going to look at key principles. So we know that behaviorism is found on the belief that behavior can be understood through observable stimuli and responses, and it emphasizes an influence on the environment that is shaping behaviors, focusing on learning through reinforcement and punishment. For cognitive psychology, understanding the mind, we have first cognitive process. Oh my God. Excuse me. Cognitive psychology explores mental processes such as perception, memory, thinking, and problem solving. And yawning, just like I did. And it investigates how individuals acquire, process, and store information, providing valuable insights into the workings of the human mind. And then applying that for applications, we have to understand the cognitive processes, how it has practical applications in areas such as artificial intelligence, cognitive therapy, and human-computer interaction. It also stands as a foundation for research in various fields, including neuroscience and educational psychology. Okay, so number 3 is the humanistic psychology, focusing on personal growth. So first we have the holistic perspective, which is humanistic psychology emphasizes the whole person, focusing on individuals' potential for growth and self-actualization. It rejects an reductionist approach and views each person as a unique and complex entity. Client-centered therapy is the approach that has led to the development of person-centered therapy, which places the client at the center of the therapeutic process and emphasizes empathy, unconditional positive regard, and genuineness. So then we have number 4 here, which is psychoanalysis, exploring the unconscious. Probably all heard of this before. The unconscious influences. Psychoanalysis delves into the role of the unconscious mind, exploring how past experiences, memories, and unresolved conflicts can influence present behaviors and emotional experiences. The therapeutic approach has contributed to the development of psychoanalytic therapy, aimed at uncovering and resolving unconscious conflicts and facilitating personal growth and self-awareness. Okay, then we have number 5, social psychology, the power of social influence. Here we look at group dynamics. So social psychology delves into the dynamics of groups, exploring how individuals' thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are influenced by the presence of others. It examines phenomena such as conformity, obedience, and groupthink. Societal impacts. It has practical implications in fields such as marketing, political campaigns, and community development, shedding light on the impact of social influence and decision-making and behavior. Number 6, we're going to look at the biological perspective, which is the role of genetics in biology. So the genetic factors. This perspective explores the influence of genetic factors on behavior, personality traits, and susceptibility to certain mental conditions, health conditions. Neurobiological processes delve into the role of neurological processes and brain functions in shaping cognitive abilities, emotional responses, and overall psychological functioning. Okay, now we have integrating multiple perspectives, a holistic approach. Synthesis. Integrating multiple perspectives allows for a comprehensive understanding of human behavior and mental processes, enabling a more holistic approach to psychological research and practice. Then we have diversity, which celebrates the diversity of ideas and methodologies, fostering a rich and multidimensional view of psychological phenomena and human experiences. Okay, since that was a lot to take in and a lot of words, we're gonna have a nice break, maybe 5, maybe 10, maybe 15 minutes. Enjoy yourselves. Okay, let's collectively come back and start reading again. Okay. Okay, so this is Lev Vygotsky. He was born in 1896 and he died in 1934. Vygotsky's cultural theory emphasizes the importance of social interaction. Remember that. He proposed the concept of the zone of proximal development, which refers to the difference between what a learner can do without assistance and what they can achieve with guidance and encouragement from a more knowledgeable other, like us as future teachers. Vygotsky also emphasized the role of cultural tools such as language and symbols in shaping thinking and behavior. Let's watch a little video on this dude. 60 seconds. Sorry, a minute. Okay. Next is this dude, Yuri Bronfenbrenner. This dude, his ecological systems theory focuses on multiple environment influences on development. He proposed that development occurs within a nested system of environments ranging from the microsystem, immediate surroundings, to the macrosystem, like a broader, cultural context. Bronfenbrenner highlighted the dynamic interactions between individuals and their environments, emphasizing the importance of considering context in understanding human development. Okay, same with this guy. We're going to watch a little video.
In 1964, a young psychologist appeared before the US Congress with a mission. It was a time when most people thought that the reason poor people stayed poor was a matter of biology and had nothing to do with the environment they grew up in. The psychologist, Yuri Bronfenbrenner, wanted to change that and convince the world that to help those less fortunate, we also needed to change their surroundings. But did he succeed? Bronfenbrenner's ecological system theory conceives that a child is influenced by 5 ecological forces. First comes the microsystem of family and friends that affect the child directly. Second are the forces of the connections between the people around the child, parents with teachers and teachers with peers. Then there are links between social settings that do not directly involve the child, such as the father with his boss, the peers with their parents, and the teacher with the principal. Next is the overarching culture, religion, and social norms that influences all others. And lastly, there is time, which changes everything over the course of one's life. Children are born into a microsystem that influences the child's experiences directly. Children from unfortunate backgrounds are more likely to experience problematic family structures, even if it's simply for the fact that parenting is more difficult if you are poor. They also encounter more negative situations at school or bad influences through friends. Consequently, a child that grows up in a negative microsystem will find it hard to succeed. The mesosystem represents the interconnections between the elements that surround the child. For example, the relationship between the father and the school teachers. If the father doesn't get along with a teacher, the child might suffer. The exosystem involves the links between social settings that do not involve the child. For example, a child's experience at home can be influenced by their parents' experiences at work. If the mother loses her job, there might be more arguments with the father, resulting in changes in their interaction with the child. The macrosystem describes the overarching culture that influences all other systems, such as a child's geographic location and ethnicity. Intelligent people who happen to live in bad places are more likely to move to better ones, but that also means that they are more likely to be strangers in a richer society. So, regardless of the child's biological potential or upbringing, on a macro level, he or she may still be at a disadvantage. The chronosystem refers to changes in the child and the environment over time. As the child grows up, the parents may stop loving each other and divorce, which can be traumatic for an 8-year-old boy. 5 years later, he may have come to terms with how things turned out. But when the boy turns 16, his mom's new boyfriend moves into their tiny apartment, and things get difficult again. Bronfenbrenner, who was influenced by Lev Vygotsky and Kurt Lewin, convinced the US Congress that a child's prospect is not genetically predestined, but is the result of the larger environment they happen to be placed in. Children who grow up in unfortunate social structures, therefore, need a form of support that not only reaches their families, but also elements of their community. Bronfenbrenner's theory helped form the Head Start program in 1965, a government program that has served more than 35 million poor children since. Decades later, Bronfenbrenner and Stephen Sessi proposed an extension of this theory, called the bioecological model. This new model recognizes gene-environment interactions and acknowledges the role of heritability, but adds that genes themselves are under the influence of the environment. In other words, the process of heritability varies in a magnitude of potentials. How much a child can make of the potential they inherit depends on the ecological environment. Bronfenbrenner made a critical contribution to our realization that parent-child relationships do not exist in a social vacuum, but are embedded in the larger structures such as community, society, and culture. In order to develop well, he allegedly said, "Every child needs at least one adult who is irrationally crazy about him or her." Now it's your turn. Make 5 circles, draw yourself in the center, and add a timeline at the bottom. Then put all the people, institutions, and forces that affect you through the 5 different systems. On the timeline below, you can add some major events from the past and those you expect in the future. Can you tell how the 5 forces are shaping your life? To read more about the topic or download the video without background music, visit sproutsschools.com.
This and all other Sprouts videos are licensed.
Okay, next up is John Dewey. Let me find what I wrote about this dude. Okay. Dewey was a philosopher, psychologist, and educational reformer whose work had technological interruption. Whose work had a profound impact on education and social reform. His ideas centered on experiential learning, wherein students learn through active engagement with their environment. Dewey advocated for a more student-centered approach to education, where learning is connected to real-life experiences and fosters critical thinking and problem-solving skills. His influence extends to democratic education, emphasizing the importance of education in fostering active citizenship and social responsibility.
There are only a few ideas that had as much of an impact on education as those of John Dewey. To understand his ideas, let's imagine Dewey reappears in the modern world. with the mission to implement his theories in a conservative school. Dewey championed learning by doing, also known as experiential learning. He observed that children learn better when they are actively engaged because they are immersed in the present and not a distant future, such as final exams. In biology, students don't read books, but instead grow plants, harvest fruits, and then feed them to snails to see what happens. Sometimes things work out. Sometimes accidents happen. Whatever the outcome, the students take notes of their observations and form rich, memorable experiences. At the end of each class, they summarize their learning and turn to discussions. The discussions prepare the students for life in a democratic society where decisions ought to be based on reasonable arguments. Through the debates, the children learn to formulate their own ideas, convince others, and learn to see the world from a different point of view. In one discussion, some started to argue that school uniforms limit self-expression and that they should be abolished. Dewey, who believed that schools should prepare children for life itself and serve society as a force for innovation and reform, encouraged those students to start a petition to find out for themselves if real social change is possible. Classes are interactive because Dewey believes that interaction with the environment is essential for the learning process, since education is an experience that is subject to constant change. Passive recipients of knowledge, on the other hand, learn very little, if anything at all. The group who started the petition present their ideas to the teacher and start a dialogue that expands their understanding and underlines their learning. Learning is interdisciplinary. Dewey believed that continuity is critical to comprehension and that an interdisciplinary education allows students to build on what they already know, which strengthens their understanding. What they observed in biology is being calculated in math, written about in English, and put into images through the arts. This provides the students the opportunity to learn how things are connected. To the brain, this process is more effective because it can link new knowledge with previous experiences and build stronger mental models. Dewey believed that when societies calculate the price of education, they shouldn't only look at the cost of school buildings, teachers' salaries, and other resources. They should also consider the costs of all the hours input by the children. Because the children are the future of our society and human progress, their time in class ought not to be wasted. It is thus the school's responsibility to be a playground to practice a future we wish to see. So when the kids grow up, they can go and create it. About education, Dewey famously said, "It's not a preparation for life. Education is life itself." The group that sought dress code reform gained a deeper knowledge about the topic and were able to develop good arguments. They printed their demands on banners and tracts and discussed their ideas with everyone until the day the majority of students and teachers had signed their petition. Eventually, the petition was presented to the principal and a new school rule was passed. Dewey's ideas were not always popular during his time, and while we made some progress in education over the last 100 years, is the situation really any better today? What do you think? Did you experience learning by doing in your school? And does your school encourage you and your friends to engage in social reform and create the future we wish to see? Please share your thoughts in the comments below.
Okay, next up, this dude. Paulo Freire. Okay, born in 1921, died in 1997. Freire was a Brazilian educator and philosopher best known for a critical pedagogy approach. He argued for education as a tool for liberation, challenging traditional banking education where knowledge is deposited into passive learners. Instead, Freire emphasized dialogical learning, where teachers and students engage in critical reflection and mutual dialogue to co-construct knowledge. His work aimed to empower marginalized groups and promote social justice through education. Another video.
Hello. In this video, we're going to meet Paulo Freire, the founder of critical pedagogy. Freire was born in 1921 in Recife, Brazil. His ideas about the role of education in political freedom eventually became some of the most significant contributions to what's now known as critical pedagogy. But to fully understand the context in which he formed his ideas, first we have to know a little bit more about the history of Brazil. Brazil was a Portuguese colony from 1500 to 1822. Even after independence, Brazil was the last country in the Western Hemisphere to outlaw slavery in 1888. Well into the 20th century, 85% of Brazil's population was still illiterate, and some still sold themselves or family members into black market slavery to ward off starvation. Freire's family was middle class when he was born, but the economic depression of the 1930s wiped them out. When Paulo was 10, the family had to move to a smaller, cheaper city on the outskirts of Recife. It was nearly a decade before their fortunes improved. Freire later said that he was desperately hungry during these years, which made learning impossible, not due to a lack of interest or ability, but because he was too distracted to focus on anything else. Young Paulo took to stealing in order to feed his family, and eventually had to drop out of elementary school. After his father died of a heart condition exacerbated by poverty and stress in 1934, Freire's mother pleaded with the principal of the local secondary school to allow her son to attend. Because Paulo was passionate about using his education to help others, the principal agreed and even reduced his tuition. With this second chance, Freire eventually studied philosophy while completing his law degree. He began his career in 1942 teaching at the same secondary school he had graduated from. In 1947, Freire became the director of the Department of Education and Culture and began conducting literacy programs for poor adults. It was during this time that he developed his major ideas about the relationship between oppression, literacy, and educational praxis. Freire's educational philosophy harshly criticizes what he terms the banking model of education, which sees students as passive, empty receptacles to be filled by the wise, all-knowing teacher. Freire linked this model of education to the socioeconomic and political relationship between oppressor and oppressed, which he experienced firsthand during his years of poverty and hunger. Building off of Hegel, Marx, and others, Freire's ontology states that the ultimate goal of all persons is to increase, not decrease, their humanity. In the same way that the colonizer thinks his own ways are always best, the teacher who sees students as hollow vessels is participating in a process that discourages critical thought, perpetuates oppression, and dehumanizes both. Rather than the traditional hierarchical model of the relationship between teacher and student, where the teacher is firmly above the student, Freire proposed in his most famous work, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, published in 1967, that effective education is built upon a democratic relationship between equals who are open to learning from one another. This teacher-student relationship is what allows conscientização, the critical awareness that precedes action, to develop in oppressed peoples over time. Conscientização begins with students becoming aware of the contradictions in their social, political, economic, gender, race, and class conditions, and then taking action to resolve those contradictions. In Freire's so-called problem-posing education, teachers problematize each issue discussed in class. Students then pose their own solutions. Teacher and students then work together in both goal and process to successfully change the conditions of oppression and ultimately achieve the democratic ideal of freedom and equality for all. Dialogue is the basis for all problem-posing pedagogy and requires solidarity, a sense of equal footing, and mutual respect. Freire wrote in his later works that education is fundamentally an act of love. Among the many educators, philosophers, and activists influenced by Paulo Freire are Bell Hooks, Henry Thoreau, Cornel West, and Jonathan Kozol. Pedagogy of the Oppressed has been translated into 17 languages, and its emancipatory teaching model has been adopted or adapted in many previously colonized countries on every continent on the globe.
The Paulo Freire Institute is currently active in 18 countries. Even U.S. educators have attempted to adapt Freire's model, though some find it too controversial. For instance, Pedagogy of the Oppressed is one of the books banned by the state of Arizona. More important than his influence on education, however, is the inspiring influence of Freire's life itself. His insistence on literacy and love in the quest for human freedom has helped free the hearts and minds of thousands of people, including the children and grandchildren of former slaves, and his vision of change is an ongoing source of encouragement and hope for millions around the globe. Hello.
Okay, and the last one we're looking at today is this dude. Jean Piaget. Piaget was a Swiss psychologist known for his theory of cognitive development. He proposed that children progress through your stages of cognitive development: sensor motor, preparational, concrete operational, and formal operational. Piaget emphasized the active role of child in constructing their understanding of the world through interactions with the environment. His work has had significant impact on education, highlighting the importance of developmentally appropriate instruction and scaffolding to support children's cognitive growth. So basically all these theoretical perspectives that I've offered today are alternative lenses for understanding human development and learning and education, and also emphasizing different aspects such as social interaction, environmental influences, experiential learning, critical consciousness, and cognitive development. Okay, and then we're gonna watch a little video on this guy, and then we can have another break.
Piaget's theory argues that we have to conquer 4 stages of cognitive development. First, the sensory motor stage. Second, the pre-operational stage. Third, the concrete operational stage. And fourth, the formal operational stage. Only once we have gone through all the stages, at what age can vary, we are able to reach full human intelligence. 1. The sensory motor stage, ages birth to 2. In the sensory motor stage, we develop through experiences and movement our 5 senses. Our brain wants to see, hear, smell, taste, and touch as much as possible. First, we start with simple reflexes, and soon after, we develop our first habits. From 4 months old, we become aware of things beyond our own body, and then as we get older, we learn to do things intentionally. A key milestone is the development of working memory, or in Piaget terms, our realization of object permanence. Before that, our mom can show and then hide a teddy, and we would think it's gone. After, we understand that objects continue to exist, even when we can't see them. We start becoming curious about everything. We want to smell flowers, taste food, listen to sounds, and talk to strangers. To explore more, we move. We learn to sit, crawl, stand, walk, and even to run. This increased physical mobility consequently leads to increased cognitive development. But we remain egocentric, meaning we can perceive the world only from our own point of view. 2. The pre-operational stage, ages 2 to 7. Our thinking is mainly categorized through symbolic functions and intuitive thoughts. We have lots of fantasies and believe objects are alive. As we are not able to apply specific cognitive operations, Piaget calls this stage pre-operational. We learn to speak and understand that words, images, and gestures are symbols for something else. When we draw our family, we are not concerned about drawing each person to scale, but rather with their symbolic meanings. We love to play pretend, which allows us to experience something new and learn a lot. At around age 4, most of us become very curious and ask many questions. We want to know everything. We can call it the birth of primitive reasoning. Piaget calls it the intuitive age, because while we realize that we have a vast amount of knowledge, we have no idea how we acquired it. Our thinking in this stage is still pretty egocentric. We think others see the world like we do, and still don't understand that they see it differently. 3. The concrete operational stage, ages 7 to 11. We finally discover logic, and we develop concrete cognitive operations, such as sorting objects in a certain order. One example of this is inductive reasoning, which means that if we see someone eating a cookie, we can draw a conclusion and then make a generalization. And we now get the concept of conservation. We understand that if we pour orange juice from a normal glass to a taller one, the amount stays the same. Our younger sister will pick the taller glass, thinking she gets more. By the same logic, we only now can understand that if 3 plus 5 equals 8, then 8 minus 3 must equal 5. Our brain learns to rearrange our thoughts, to classify and build concrete operational mental structures. For example, we now know that we can reverse an action by doing the opposite. Excited by our new mental abilities, we apply them in conversations, activities, when we learn to write, and in school. As a result, we get to know ourselves better. We begin to understand that our thoughts and feelings are unique and not necessarily those of others. That means that we learn to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. 4. The formal operational stage, age 12 plus. Once we become teenagers, we become formally operational. We now have the ability to think more rationally about abstract concepts and hypothetical events. Our advanced cognitive abilities allow us to understand abstract concepts such as success and failure, love and hate. We form a deeper understanding of our own identity and our morality. We now also think that we understand why people behave the way they behave, and as a result, can become more compassionate. Our brain can now do deductive reasoning, which means we can compare two statements and reach a logical generalization. Our new mental skills allow us to plan our life systematically and prioritize, and we can make assumptions about events that have no necessary relation to reality. We can now also philosophize and just think about thinking itself. Our new sense for our identity now also creates egocentric thoughts, and some start to see an imaginary audience watching them all the time. Piaget believed in lifelong learning, but insisted that the formal operational stage is the final stage of our cognitive development. Jean Piaget's first interests were animals, and he published his first scientific paper on albino sparrows in 1907, when he was just 11 years old. In 1920, he began working with standardized intelligence tests. He realized that younger children consistently make types of mistakes that older children do not. He concluded that they must think differently, and spent the rest of his life studying the intellectual development of children. Piaget's theory argues that
Would you look at that? Another 5-minute break. Enjoy. I'm busy. I'm teaching a lesson. I'm teaching a lesson. Okay. Let's collectively come back. Okay. Okay, so since it's easier, I just put a Kahoot on the slide instead of actually doing the code and everything, since that's like too time consuming. So this is the first one. Every acquisition of accommodation becomes material for assimilation. So think about who we talked about and who it could be.
Is it red? The red one, Piglet? Page?
Yeah, okay.
Oh my God, Page.
Yeah, it's picket fence. Okay. Good job, Christina. Okay. Bravo. Okay, this one. Through others, we become ourselves. Again, think about who we spoke about, who we didn't speak about, and who we think it is. Heavy. Oh.
Love.
You didn't see the answer. Thank you. Beautiful. Okay, and then the next one is this one. Sabrina.
Is it the red one, John?
Yes, good job. And last one, who wants to do the last one? Evie?
Paolo.
Good job, Evie. Good pronunciation. Okay, and we are done. Thank you for listening. How are you?